Javi International Center. It's wonderful to see you all here again. I'm very excited about today's topics. As a mother of 3 children who are aged 17 to 22, the issue of jobs in the future, the issue of technology is something that concerns me every day. I remember when all the technological changes started coming out, I was very excited, very positive, saying that their world would be a much better place than mine was because of the technology. And then some of the concerns started coming with it. And we understand that nothing is ever black or white, and there's always going to be issues. And this is an issue that I think is very important to hear your point of view, because you as young people, not only is it more important to you because it's your future in jobs and technology, but you also can assess it and present to us your views, which are very important as we continue our work. So I would like to start immediately by giving the floor to Ameenah Gurib-Fakim, who was the president of Mauritius from 2015 to 2018. And we very much look forward to your insights. The topic of your talk is the future of jobs, education for knowledge, skills, and character. Please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, dear friend Katharina. Young leaders, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Roshan Muradov, Secretary of the NGIC, everybody present, all our audience. Good evening, good morning, and good day, wherever you are in these time zones. Again, I would like to thank the NGIC for associating me with this event. They always come up with these wonderful events, of course, which speak to the challenges of the day. And again, Roshan, thank you for all the good work that you do. So I'll just go straight into the topic. So ladies and gentlemen, in 2015, the world leaders endorsed the 2030 United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development. As a woman, I cannot but feel that the 17 SDGs are inextricably linked in SDG 5, relating to gender equality, and SDG 8, that of decent work and economic growth. The challenges will remain in the implementation. The burden of attainment of the SDGs, which after all remain the promises made in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, remain universal and have to be applied globally. Ladies and gentlemen, it is fitting nonetheless to underscore that the challenges to the attainment of the SDGs are also shaped by global geo-economic and political realities. The world of work is being influenced by the changes being brought about by the fourth industrial revolution era. Initially, it was estimated that the fourth industrial revolution could result in the creation of millions of jobs, but if no action is taken in time, it could also lead to the loss of millions of these jobs. Yet, this threat of technological unemployment, which Keynes raised for the first time in 1930, is resurfacing and is still just as worrying, especially in view of the particularity of the particularly high level of unemployment globally. There is no doubt that the world of work is changing, and it is not disappearing. Take 3 famous economists. It seems that Schumpeter is right, rather than Friedman or even Keynes. We are entering an economy of creative destruction, an economy that destroys job once and for all, but which can create others, provided we have visionary leadership. That said, in deliberate, targeted digitalization of the world of work, I also see a real opportunity to create new working culture. Ladies and gentlemen, leaps in science and technology are having profound impacts on the nature of jobs. Zero job growth have increased with automation in the manufacturing and services sector. These profound changes are putting heavy responsibilities on government, the business community, and the workers. The need to discuss and embrace the right strategies to sustain employment, narrow income and social inequalities, and ensure the development of the right mix of human capital, gender, and skills to sustain growth and economic development and reiterate the need for a new social contract, a term that was brought in as at 1762 by the philosopher Jacques Rousseau. 1762, social contract. The past few months have also highlighted the fragility of many institutions and underscored the plight of people who have no social safety nets. It is clear that the youth are now looking ahead through the prism of an insecure future. It is now the call on leaders to take the right decisions in order to achieve more than just social justice, but coupled with a fairer distribution of the wealth produced on this planet, in order to preserve and secure the right to a decent life for people throughout the world. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a direct relation between education and human capital development. Education is fundamental to development and to growth. The human mind makes possible all development achievements, from health advances and agricultural innovations to efficient public administration and private sector growth. For countries to reap these benefits fully, they need to unleash the potential of the human mind. And there is no better tool for doing that education, as it impacts economic development, improves people's lives, and growth development and poverty reduction depend on the knowledge and skills that people acquire and not the number of years that they sit in a classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, we must invest early, invest smartly, invest in learning for all, including and especially in girls. Investing in girls' education and not restricting them to confined areas of studies will also help in their emancipation. From a developing country perspective, I have to stress on the education of girls and on encouraging them to pursue studies in the field of science, mathematics, engineering, or architecture, and other specialized fields will help in the emancipation and future career path. An increase in their participation has a multiplier effect in sharing future income earnings, equivalent to a potential increase in GDP by 1.5%. Women's participation in the formal economy and lack thereof is a business issue, and their participation not only fosters greater credibility in their respective institutions, but also lead to heightened democratic outcomes. Decision makers must be prepared to contend with a growing discontent on the nature of globalization, as there is an increasing need felt for inclusive growth and for an increased participation of women in economic activities. Perhaps stronger and more affirmative action with a broad range of fiscal and social policy instruments to enable the smoother participation of women in work should be envisaged. More importantly, more familiar to all of us is the necessity for public-private cooperation, including the spirit of tripartism that can help to find consensus to bridging the gender gap. Similarly, broadening women's engagement in public life addresses issues that have broader society implication, touching family life, education, and health. Business leaders are perhaps more willing to be addressing gender parity in companies, be it as a matter of fairness and equality, while becoming aware of the rationale for diversity in the management boards. Ladies and gentlemen, female talents still remain one of the most underutilized business resources. I'm pleased to note, however, that increasingly business leaders and governments agree that tackling barriers to equality is of necessity. The presence of women in leading to informed corporate decision-making and business innovation. When it comes to leadership position, companies with women in executive management committees have shown to perform better. Never has this been felt more than now, as we are slowly emerging from the COVID era when more jobs need to be created. There is, however, a caveat. Even if enough new jobs are created in the post-pandemic economy, they may not be equally accessible to everyone. The rapid digitalization of the economy risks causing a decline in quality of opportunity, especially since those in teleworkable jobs tend to be more highly skilled. Schools and universities have faced similar disruption over the course of this year, and there is a risk that the negative effects of this disruption could linger. Research indicates but the long-term socioeconomic status of children born during pandemics can be negatively affected. The crisis has also hit young workers disproportionately hard in the first half of this year, and employment for 15 to 24 years old dropped by almost 5%. This also affects long-term growth. Young people have the greatest digital know-how and therefore the greatest potential to push digitalization forward. So how can we equip people with the skills they need in the post-pandemic economy? Clearly, investing in education structure is vital. Yet even in places like Europe, only 2 Euro area countries are ranked in the top 10 for mathematics and science in the most recent PISA exercise. The highest ranked EU university in the latest QS World Ranking is in 44th place. At the same time, the key near-term challenge is likely to be the reskilling and upskilling of the existing workforce. Here, technological advances should help. Modern online learning includes massive online courses, fully online master's degrees, and other online material accompanied by classroom interaction. Greater use of digital technology makes it easier to better match jobs with skills, especially in the face of limited labor mobility. Factors that hinder labor mobility in Europe, for example, include strong cultural attachments and language barriers. Only half of Europeans are able to hold a conversation in a language other than their own mother tongue. But automatic translation has improved substantially due to artificial intelligence. The experience of the pandemic has also demonstrated people's ability to work remotely across different economies. This could help support the virtual mobility of workers. Of course, these same forces could also accelerate the outsourcing of service-based jobs to the rest of the world. That is why we have to seize the opportunity and invest in education and training now. Even if innovation and education can raise long-term growth, we are likely to face increasingly volatility around the growth path. Disruptive technological change and the transition to a carbon neutral economy will accelerate structural shifts. Our societies and economies will need to adapt. And this brings me to my conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, policymakers have rightly focused on the short-term disruption caused by the pandemic. In many regions, they have acted swiftly and effectively. Yet, the pandemic has exposed and accelerated long-term trends. These trends could generate significant benefits, but also disruption during the transition. This is where perception of unfairness needs to be vanquished, and it behoves upon us all, as representative of government, employers and workers, to bring to fruition, through appropriate policies and actions, the crucial targets of elimination of the gender gaps and facilitate the participation of women in work. There are important debates to be had about what growth should look like in the 21st century. But in all cases, sustaining growth requires harnessing the possibilities, using new technologies offer our workers and businesses in the most inclusive possible manner. And it involves making sure we're able to adapt to new environments created by unpredictable shocks we'll face. To meet these goals, decisive policy actions are needed. I'm confident that policymakers will find the right way forward. There is a crave for social justice, even more pronounced as we see the nexus and interconnectedness between social, economic, and political developments. As Antoine Saint-Exupéry wrote, the task is not to foresee the future, but to enable it. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You brought up so many interesting points that I think will come up in our discussion later during our question and answer on women's jobs and on future of jobs. And it just, as I said, both optimistic and very frightening in some ways as to what's and whether our leadership in the world is ready for the change that we know is coming very soon. I think that our friend Zlatko Lagumdzija is here. Yes?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Mr. Lagumdzija was the Prime Minister of Bosnia and Herzegovina from 2001 to 2002, and then later Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs from 2012 to 2015. And today he will address the subject challenge of future technologies, risks, and opportunities. Please.
Thank you, Katrina. Of course, I mean, you made really, I wish I was speaking before you. I mean, so now I have a problem because I have to also be smart and interesting and keeping attention of this extraordinary young group of people who I want to thank Rovshan for bringing them together. Not only young people, but I mean, especially this young group of people. So I will talk a little bit about the challenges of the future technologies and sense of risks and opportunities. You ended with being optimist or pessimism, with putting the question about optimism and pessimism. When it comes to technologies, we have much more reasons also to be asking ourselves, should be optimistic or pessimistic about the future trends that technology itself is going on. Maybe the best answer is the quote of famous A.G. Ward, who was in a poem, one of his famous poems, saying that the pessimists are always complaining about the wind, optimists are waiting for wind to change the course, and realists are trying to put the sail on the right place so they could really use the opportunity of wind, however wind is going on. I think that we have to be, when it comes to technology, be aware of the facts and things that are going on in sense of development of technology, but at the same time, we have to be aware of the threats and opportunities at the same time. So when it comes to technology, I think one of the major things in the time that is in front of us is something which I call as a leading change in the age of sustained development and artificial intelligence that we are heading into, and how to use technology in the most powerful way, in most productive way, in most prosperous way, in most human way, in order that new normal or this post-corona era is a little bit different than us. So the question is, how did we get in here when it comes to technology? Where are we today, and what are the next global challenges when we talk about technology? Next challenges that are related to technology and not related to technology at the same time are definitely the challenges that we are facing. We will be confronting them with support of technology, more or less. Climate change, when it comes to climate change, technology is inevitable climate change creator and have to be climate change re-engineered in a positive direction. When it comes to pandemia, there are a lot of theories how this pandemic happened to us, but regardless of that, how did it happen to us, technology, research and science and technology in general is helping us to go faster, better through this unprecedented calvary that we're going through. Sustainable development as an answer to the climate change, changing the very nature of economy, is something which is possible because of technology. And finally, nuclear threat. Nuclear threat is something that we've been living for decades. Since the Nagasaki and Hiroshima, we are living with the threat of nuclear energy. But at the same time, we know that nuclear energy is one of the inventions, the first one, we can say in most broadest context, that's the first technology that, depending on how you use it, can be the source and resource of our prosperity and can be resource and source of our destruction. You can use it as a bomb, or you can use it as energy that is moving us in a prosperous way, in a variety of the ways, by producing energy that is sustainable and that is not polluting the air the way CO2 emission and non-renewable energies are doing. The same thing is happening with artificial intelligence, which is basically speaking our latest threat. Artificial intelligence is something like nuclear energy. Computer can be used in both ways. It can be used for enslaving us or freeing us. It can be used for destroying us or helping us to flourish. So that's the reason why something which is called social contract for the artificial intelligence age is something that is strongly needed, and something which is strongly needed, something which is artificial intelligence and national accord and proper multilateral institution that will be dealing with it. The same way that International Agency for Atomic Energy was basically speaking invented in order to somehow manage the threats of our atomic energy, the same way we may expect that in the near future it will be, let's say, relatively fertile ground among decision makers, that we have to establish something which is some kind of global multilateral mechanism that will be dealing with artificial intelligence. If we can say that IAEA is International Atomic Energy Agency, instead of IAEA, we may be looking in the direction of having IAIA, International Artificial Intelligence Agency, that will be dealing with it the same way it does. So the thing that is related to the technology is definitely the changing nature of capitalism, the changing nature of economy. And that's the reason why we have to as much think about it, we have to discuss about it as much as is possible, we have to learn about it. And since we are under umbrella of NGIC, that our motto is, as you all know, is dialogue, tolerance, learning, understanding, I think we need much more and more needs to be going along those four magic words: more dialogue, more respect, more learning, and more understanding everything. And of course, to do so, what leadership is about is to contribute not to ourselves, but the future generations and the future of our society. So in order to tackle the issue of technology, technology is no more technology itself. That is, let's say, you can master technology, you can get your PhD in some engineering, or by the way, my basic degree, I'm technically and officially smart for computers because I have all my degrees in computer science, from my engineering degree to my master's degree and my PhD, they were all in computer science. And back 30 something years ago, when I finished with all those educational processes, becoming the computer scientist, I realized that computers are worth nothing. They simply are not worth, unless we do something with them. And when we do something with them, they can be worth for the prosperity or worth for going backwards in destruction. So computers in the age of artificial intelligence, in post-corona era, or information technologies are going to be more and more relevant, having in mind what we do with them, not how we make them and who makes them and what is the power of those technologies. So in that context, I think it is very important to understand that when you take a look at, for example, the major threats that World Economic Forum is launching every year for the purpose of Davos, World Economic Forum Davos meeting, they are launching something which is called the Global Risk Report. The last Global Risk Report was very clear, that asking what do the respondents forecast that will be let's say the biggest threat to the world. The last one, in the midst of pandemic, the last one was number one was infectious disease. Infectious disease never was on the top 10, especially not top 5 in previous years. But suddenly, this year, infectious disease became the first one. Livelihood crisis was the number 2 ranked. Extreme weather events were number 3 ranked. Number 4 ranked was cyber security failure. Cyber security failure is clear technological threat, is becoming more and more relevant. The number 5 threat was digital inequality. Digital inequality as a global threat that people even at this time of pandemic, this time of climate change and all these things, that is happening to be very top one. When people ask what is the medium-term threat in next 3 to 5 years, number 1 was human environmental damage. People realize that this pandemic is going to get scaled down. As a matter of fact, among top 10, pandemic was not among top 10. Second one was asset bubble burst as a result of global pandemic. But the number 3 global threat for the period of next 3 to 5 years was IT infrastructure breakdown. So regardless of cyber risks and regardless of digital inequality, there's something that people are afraid of, that the next 3 to 5 years, we may get overloaded and as a result have IT infrastructure breakdown. And of course, then we have threat number 4 was peace and instability. Threat number 5 was commodity shocks, and debt crisis. So you see that the fears of today are different than the fears of tomorrow, but in both directions, you can see the fears that are related to technology. When it comes to the, let's say, long-term risks, you could see that number one long-term risk, what are people saying? In the next 3 to 5 years, we will somehow tackle those climate changes. We will somehow tackle those economical problems. But what we are going to expect as a result of this, all these problems in the next 5 to 10 years horizon, number one is resource geopolitization. Number two is weapons of mass destruction. And number three are state collapses. So people are thinking that in categories of next 3 to 5 years, in the next year, we will be tackling these issues that are related to economy, with climate change, with technology, but on the end of the day, we are getting again to square one, which is basically speaking social and geopolitical problems. And so what I'm trying to say, I will use the phrase, which I like very much from one of the book, I think Jeffrey Sachs' book from about global wealth from 2005. I like one of the sentences when he almost forgot, but that was so prophetic at that time. He wrote that we are living in a time which is bizarre combination of Stone Age emotions, medieval age beliefs, and almost godlike technologies. So that's where we are today. We still, our emotions are on a level of Kubrick Odyssey 2000 that ends with those monkeys hitting each other with the bones in front of the big computer. And emotions that we have today are not so different than emotions that we had in the Stone Age. When we talk about beliefs, the way we organize a society, we are living in a time that is basically speaking still structured around the principles and values and beliefs that were a result of Renaissance and time of Enlightenment and French Revolution and all those democratic processes, the Berlin Wall falling down and all those processes that we're witnessing. So the systems that we are living, values that we beliefs that we live, are beliefs that are known for hundreds of years. But technology is almost godlike technologies. We are today playing with technologies that are basically hitting us in a way that we have no clue how it will end. So today, when it comes to, so we have three major paths that are going with different speeds. One is technology, that is going almost godlike technologies. Another one is economy. Economies lift often because of technology. But the third one, we as society are not moving in such a big direction, in such a quick direction. When you take Detroit Big Three from 1999, you see that at that time, Detroit Big Three, when you compare that with Silicon Big Three in just some years ago, 3A, Apple, Alphabet, and Facebook, or when you take that from Cupertino Mountain View and Menlo Park, which is just in 15 miles distance, those Apple, Alphabet, and Facebook today have 10 times fewer employees that GM, Ford, and Chrysler that were Big Three of 20 years ago. They have 10 times fewer employees, but they have 30 times bigger stock market value. So we are, basically speaking, shifting strongly in a direction which is definitely completely different. And to conclude with this, my favorite example is, I think that we live in time in which we have to see how we will master technology and how we will use technology in the best way. The Apollo project is a project that is a symbol of the 20th century. The Apollo project in the midst of 70s estimated price upon termination was about $25 billion, more than annual revenue of Big Three of that time, which was GE, IBM, and Shell Oil. So Apollo cost of Apollo, sending men to the moon and putting them back, was in a size of revenue of IBM, Shell, and GE. When you adjust that for inflation, it's about $280, $290 billion. But when it is adjusted in terms of GDP, it was about $641.1 billion. That can be comparable exactly with the annual US defense budget of that year, 2 years ago, 641 billion. So Apollo project cost as much as one annual GDP, one annual defense budget of USA. Apollo project hired 400,000 engineers, scientists, technicians from over 20,000 companies and universities. Apollo symbol was Saturn V rocket with 5 F-1 rocket engineers with over 3 million parts, which in 1/10 of a second during liftoff burned about 10 times more fuel than Lindbergh used to cross Atlantic just 40 years earlier. So Apollo of today is not, we can symbolize with 3 big A, 3 Apollo, 3 A's, which is Apple, which is just, I just said before, I checked on market value before this discussion with you, that Apple today market capitalization is 2.550 trillions. That's what Apple worth. Amazon worth is $1.761 trillion, and Alphabet is $1.923 trillion. When you put these figures together, you come to $6.234 trillion, those 3 A's worth today, which is about 8 to 9 times of scale of New Frontiers project, which is US defense budget. So today, let's say those 3 companies are 8 to 9 times more worth than overall Apollo project today. And the next, your generation have to have Apollo project. And that Apollo project is related to leadership, and that Apollo project is related to technology as well. And next Apollo project is not sending Jeff Bezos' family to do Elon Musk to circle around the globe. The next Apollo project is not that we all just circle around and has a tourist look at the Earth. Our next Apollo project is not living on the moon. Our next Apollo project is not going to the Mars. Our next Apollo project is living on Earth. Living on Earth because Apollo project moonshot to sustain life and human security on Earth. That's what is Apollo project of your generation. And I'm sure that you will be able to manage it because after all, I'm looking at my son and my kids. And Katya, I'm sure that you share my opinion, but my kids are significantly smarter than I was in my generation was it when we were in their age. And we have to somehow close the gap in between godlike technologies, medieval age beliefs, and Stone Age emotions. That's what leadership for sustained development, for new normal, for post-corona era, for age of artificial intelligence, and those things is about. So Katrina, thank you so much. And I really am very happy that as you see you so enthusiastic. And I'm sure that, and I see why you are so enthusiastic, because you are, every time when, I'll give you one little secret, every time when we talk about NGIC, our meetings, private meetings and official meetings, Katrina is always talking about this project, about our young leaders. And I understand, Katrina, where your energy comes from. That is so brilliant and so big, because obviously you are using a lot to be reflecting this extraordinary young group of people. So I'm optimistic about the future, not because the wind will change, but because I'm optimistic, because I'm sure that you can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to say that I agree entirely. I love this project because it gives me hope. Sometimes when we all get together and listen to all the problems we have in the world, in the economy and climate change and in pandemic, it gets a little depressing. And then you listen to young people and you have a lot of hope. And I totally agree that the young people now are way ahead of where we were. I would say probably a decade ahead of where we were at their age because of many factors, globalization, technology, opportunities. And I think because they were given more opportunities, we expect more of them as well. I want to thank both of our speakers today for what I considered a very thought-provoking, optimistic yet very realistic, very philosophical, global perspective on these very key issues which affect all of us, but especially you. I'd like to turn now to some of our youth leaders and start, please, with two alumni, Liz Grossman of the United States and Elvin Shakhsuvarli of Azerbaijan. Are you both here? Liz, are you here?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, wonderful, Liz. I am sorry I have it on two screens, so I didn't see you. Please.
Great, no problem.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I want to thank the entire Nizami Ganjavi team, Ravshan. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I also want to thank the Excellencies for their brilliant remarks and everyone for being here today. So my name is Liz Grossman Kitoi. I am a communications and partnership strategist. I am based in New York City, particularly in Brooklyn, New York, but I've spent the past 13 years working across Africa and now run my own business, Baobab Consulting. Baobab is a social impact consulting firm that works with world leaders in politics, business, and philanthropy with a goal to change the narrative about Africa and to build more sustainable partnerships between Africa and the world. And so the first thing I wanted to note about was when Her Excellency Ameenah Gurib-Fakim, who is a partner and a mentor to me, and one of the reasons that I'm here today, in fact. So thank you so much for all of your partnership. And what you said about, building a new working culture, I think that's something that I would like to touch on today. Baobab was founded 5 years ago in Senegal, and my co-founder and I were in two different cities. So in 2016, we started our company remotely. And this was before all of the remote work conversations were happening, before the pandemic. And when I moved to New York City from Dakar, where I was based, nothing really changed about the way we were working. We were still using Google Docs. We were still using WhatsApp and different technologies in order to get our work done. But we always had some in-person touch points, and we always were able to, at some point in the work, meet in different places in the world. I will even cite the example of working with you, Your Excellency, the fact that we met digitally. We started communicating via WhatsApp, via LinkedIn, and our first ever in-person meeting was actually in Baku at the Baku Forum in 2019. So we had been working from a distance, and then that touch point, I believe, is really what solidified our working and personal relationship, having the in-person touch point. So for me, from where I sit, the future of work is definitely going to be remote. Look at all of us here across the world, sitting in how many continents and time zones, but having forums like the Baku Forum, where we can come together, meet, exchange, shake hands, share meals. I really believe that that is the hybrid future of work. So I'm very excited for the day that all of us can sit together around an in-person table and have these discussions, but it's great to have these types of communications, forever, because it really, really helps us to communicate. The other thing I wanted to note on the future of jobs is just about entrepreneurship. As I said, I am an entrepreneur. And, in my country, in the US, small businesses make up 99.9% of US businesses, and it employs 47% of US employees. We need to support small business growth, and we need to be providing the education that is required for small business owners like myself and many others I imagine on this call are also entrepreneurs. We need to support not only just with the conceptualizing the idea, building a business plan. These types of trainings are great, but also the hard skills, finance, accounting, taxes, all of these things, which I personally was never taught in school. I think if we can start teaching these things earlier, we'll see more businesses succeed in the long term, and not just be an idea that we run for a year and then drop because we don't have the actual hard skills to do it. I also wanted to touch quickly on what His Excellency said about computers can make or break us. I fully agree. The internet can make or break us. I started my career as a teacher in high school, an elite high school in Dakar, Senegal. And I saw this firsthand. All of my students had computers, they had internet, they had all of the actual hard tools, but they did not know what to do with them. They didn't know how to do academic research using them. They didn't know how to be professional when it comes to their communications and how they're speaking using it. So I believe that the importance of teaching digital skills to all young people, and also to some of us, young, yes, we're young, but we're also professionals. These are skills that we need even more now as all of our work becomes digital. So I think that's where I will stop. And I just want to say, please do get in touch. I would love to meet all of you, collaborate. And again, thank you to Nizami Ganjavi for providing this amazing forum for us to meet and discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. That was, you brought up a lot of points that I'd like to talk with you more about, because they're very interesting points. Yeah, and I would like to ask Elvin to speak now, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Yushchenko. Thanks so much for your valuable thoughts, the speakers, and the Nizami Ganjavi International Center for having me. So several months ago, when I was giving lecture to the young group of MBA students, some of this about the role of information technology in supply chain management. So some of the students were approaching me and complaining about the duration we're having, because they were thinking that 2 months of course is too much for the information technology. So this is the mistake that the governments and the businesses had before the COVID-19 pandemics, ignoring the importance of the information technology. So from my point of view, there are actually two phases of challenges. First one in the business, and second one is the information technological challenge in education. So the onset of COVID-19 and the lockdowns that followed across the world had a profound disruptive effect on every businesses. The combined impact of a health crisis and temporary economic shutdown would have been a devastating blow a decade ago. But in actually 2020, most businesses were in a position to make the rapid adjustments necessary to continue operation, despite the wholesale closure of offices and other work locations. And IT departments around the world rose to the challenge of ensuring business continuity, security of data, responding to the sudden crisis with speed and agility. Digital transformation programs were expected to play out over years, were compressed into a few intense weeks as organizations shifted to remote working, practical overnight, and business transactions took place virtually or online. Talking about the challenges which the education system faced, although we couldn't meet our professors and students in physical classrooms, distance learning fortunately broke down the borders and made getting quality education cheaper and more accessible for everyone having the access to internet. And the major problem which makes this increase unemployment, the arrival of robotic systems and automation systems. Although it's a problem for the people who are going to lose their jobs, but the core of the problem is, I think, is the speed is that the education system cannot catch up with the speed of development in technology, so many people remain unemployed. Under normal circumstances, such a transition would have been incredibly hard to implement. But one wise man said, sometimes pure necessity is a stronger drive than a clear vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Yesterday, President Vira Freiberger used her opportunity to ask you a question. And I hope you don't mind if I also abuse this time, because of what our last two young speakers have said. It made me think of something. Today I was at a conference and I was sitting next to the education minister, and he was asking my point of view on certain educational issues, probably because of the age of my children. But, we talked about an educational system that's not moving fast enough, Elvin talked about. And I remember when I was young, we were taught some life skills, but they were like home economics and shop. But now I think that our young people need a whole set of different life skills. We were talking about business skills, financial. I know in my country, financial literacy is a big problem. And people don't know what insurance is and what banking is, or they're just at 18 or 20, just not ready for that. Digital skills. They know how to use a computer, but they don't know how to research. And so it's a new set of life skills. I would greatly appreciate if all of you wrote to me a few sentences and sent it through Roshan on what you think would be the life skills that should be taught in high school and or college that are not being taught now, to help us prepare for a changing world, and with teachers who possibly aren't even aware of how quickly the world is changing. I'd really appreciate that. Now I'd like to move on, please, to the speeches of some of our new young leaders. And I would like to start with Shoddy Abu Zayed of Egypt, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And I am Shoddy Abu Zayed, and I am from Egypt, especially from Hurghada. And I am teaching assistant at the Arab Academy for Science, Technology, and Maritime Transport in the field of logistics and supply chain. And also I work in supply chain sector with the Amazon company. And also I'm a co-founder of Mediterranean Youth Foundation. So here we faced a lot of challenges in the field of education globally, especially in the way of teaching or the way of receiving a certain education in the pandemic era. And also we have a huge demand regarding to the new skills of education and new skills regarding to the employment itself. And that's why when we can look up to the World Economic Forum, we will see that they changed some needed skills in the 2030 and 2015 and 2020 in order to cope up with the life after the pandemic itself. So we can see also some skills that we still needed, like in 2015 and 2020, and also we need it in 2030. For example, we have a huge need of critical thinking, and also we have a huge need also of cognitive skills and so on. So this is very important. Regarding to Egypt, we already take some serious actions and initiatives regarding from NGOs, from policymakers, and so on, in order to cope up with the new education styles and the new skills that we would like to have in order to cope up with the economy or with the challenges that we faced during coronavirus. That's why we have some initiatives for non-formal education in order to catch up with the speed of learning, because we have a lot of new technologies and so on. So the education inside the universities itself, it will give us the formal education. But in order to cope up with the speed of technology and so on, so we can have non-formal education, and it will be through authorized centers, and it will be through some initiatives in Egypt. Also, we have a national website for e-learning, and this is for free for all citizens from all over the world. It's launched by the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and we have also another support from Ministry of Telecommunications in order to foster the some life skills, as you said, like for example, for business, entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, some digital skills like to learn Python or other digital languages, and so on. Also in Egypt, we focus more on research, and nowadays we have a lot of research centers, especially in the field of IoT, Internet of Things, especially in the field of digital supply chain and logistics. And we already, all of us, touch the role of supply chain and logistics in the pandemic era, and how we can deliver the vaccines to other countries and so on. So this is what we do, and this is what we put this, our strategies, and it's called Egypt 2030, and you can have a look on it. And also we are looking for a lot of partnerships in order to cooperate, and in order to be like, because at the end we are global citizens. So we are global citizens, so we want to support each other, and we are aiming for win-win situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shoddy. And I would next like to ask Alexander Savovich from Bosnia Herzegovina to speak.
Thank you. I hope all you can hear me. Thanks, speakers, for the great insights, and I'm going to go straight to the point. For me, it looks that we all agree that our path regarding technology and the changes that it will bring to it is going to be significant. But I am wondering, are we looking through the new circumstances, through the old systems, old way of thinking, where we actually often as a policy makers also asking the wrong questions, where we're trying to play catch up game with the technology changes, and we never actually succeeded in that. My question regarding the jobs would be, what if the machines actually, like artificial intelligence and all these new technologies, become better at the most jobs than people are, which by many argue that is going to happen. So are we then answering from the economy standpoint the question, which it would be great to hear Mr. Lagumdzija comment on? Are we answering the question, what is the solution for the basic needs? So is that universal basic income or some other solution? But the even more important question is, what if there are no jobs, but we cover the basic needs? Like as a society, we cover the basic stuff, we cover the or even the good life. What if there are no jobs? Is it? I have a feeling that social problems that we would face at that time are much different than what we actually look at now. We are looking at very much through the economic perspective, but if this technology progress continues in this pace, or even speeds up, I don't think that our biggest problems will be of resources or the covering of the basic lives of people. It will be actually like answering the fundamental questions about, is work, how we define work? Is work something that is just that we do for salary, or is that something that is more? And if we define it as something different, how many people can actually participate in that kind of economy? How many people have capabilities of actually participate in that kind of economy? So it would be great to hear a few comments from the speakers about this little bit, let's say, long-term perspective of how we going to answer these questions. Like, is from the economy side, is that universal basic income, or like do we even think about those other possible solutions, and what kind of problems those solutions will brought us? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, if we could turn to Azerbaijan and ask Anastasia Zimina to make some comments.
Thank you very much. Dear leaders, I'm happy to take part in this event. I want to thank you for your experience and background that you share with us, that the best thing that can happen to young leaders. Regarding the topic, some experts believe there will be a wholesale revolution in the nature of our education system. I managed the project where we worked with students, and I conducted the survey. Students had to assess their learning in accordance with the requirements of the labor market. First year students rated slightly higher, 6.5 out of 10, but fourth year undergraduate students who faced a problem rated much lower than 4.5 out of 10. It means that there is still a problem, and the revolution in personnel training will be needed for the future. After it, I conducted the survey for applicants who will apply to the university in 2 or 3 months. For the main factors were both high quality of education and the reputation of the educational institution. And they want to gain additional professional certificates for their future career, and they will literally have to fight for the best position in their further career. In my opinion, we can do more for a young generation to gain knowledge in practice more than in theory. For instance, project-based learning approach, learning by doing, developing an integrative discipline-based course curriculum, changes in methodology, build a hybrid career services model to give students a chance to meet more often with employers and alumni mentors, develop additional programs and mechanisms for the early and direct interaction of undergraduate students with faculty, leading to active participation in research and in the scholarly process. I have already been a part of the transformation of improving process, both the private sector and the public sector, and I would like to do much more in this direction. Once again, I want to express my gratitude for this opportunity. I was happy to share my thoughts and ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I had a message that Madam President want to say something now? No?
Thank you, Katrina. I'll just respond to the previous speaker when he was looking at what he was talking about, job creation and whether we can, if I paraphrase what he's trying to, his concern, is that we will never be able to compete with computers. And computers will always outsmart people. But there are certain jobs, I feel, again, I stand corrected because I caveat what I'm saying, because there will come a point when you'll always wonder whether they will not be able to replace everything. But in terms of preparedness, we're going to have to kind of outsource certain tasks, which are already happening to computers. They're already doing it. If you look at jobs like accountancy, you look at many of these banking jobs, they're more or less going to go by the next 10 years. So there are jobs that computers, in my opinion, still can't do. And this is where the training and the education we actually give out to our kids now matter. And this is where having a hands-on experience, learning with your hands, delving into areas, where you combine many kind of line of studies, which weren't possible before. I think we have to really promote lateral thinking in our youth so that there will be jobs where, for example, empathy matters and computers can't do that. So we really have to rethink the job landscape. And this is where the leadership again matters. This is where the lateral thinking matters. This is where imparting a different education right from a very young age matters. And this is the kind of thinking that we need to have at our level within the organization of Nizami, which can actually bring to the fore the thinking process. So this is the line of thinking which will be going ahead as we move out of the pandemic and beyond. But unfortunately, in many parts of the world, this thinking process is still not there. And this is where we have to go.
Thank you. Thank you. If we could then move on to our next young leader, and that would be Graham Strickland of the US.
Mr. Lagumdzija, did you have a point before I spoke? Okay, I can go ahead. Well, thank you so much for all of your remarks. Mr. Lagumdzija, I wanted to touch a little bit on what you discussed with the shift in capitalism under increasing automation. I wanted to discuss the concerns I think we should have about the rising capabilities of AI and its impact on corporate power, specifically in the tech sector and at the expense of human rights and liberties. And this is specifically to reflect on the balance between state power and corporate power. And so at the most basic level, as automation advances and its capabilities, it allows for processing capabilities unseen before, allowing for companies, namely the big four tech giants, to amass and act on large amounts of information that it collects on folks like you and I. And with such a competitive advantage, it will largely entrench these players in the market and block out competition. And so my main concern is that these companies will grow power exponentially, which we have seen during the pandemic. Ultimately, I believe that the increasing power that automation lends to these institutions will largely go unchecked in their responsibility to society. And we already see this obfuscation of responsibility from companies like Facebook and its role in the Rohingya crisis, among others. And I worry that their unchecked power will continue and lend itself to human rights abusers and authoritarian regimes such as China. And now often AI capabilities allow for companies to provide free services through the subsidization of products via advertising. And more specifically, these firms communicate this subsidization as democratizing society. And I wholeheartedly disagree. I think while these free services extend internet access to areas previously not able to afford such tools, I want us to look at what cost are we extending these free services. Privacy concerns, destruction of truth, democracy, and human rights. For me, this doesn't look like democracy. This sounds like free services with uncontrolled externalities that damage individual rights and are just one more human rights abuse waiting to happen. I think we should look towards greater regulation. I applaud some of the efforts done by the EU on GDPR, but I think we need more action, and quite frankly, some by the US, where many of these corporations are housed. I particularly like the idea of the IAIA that you mentioned. And I still think the US remains behind the times on creating regulations surrounding these issues. And if we learned anything from the US congressional hearings on Facebook back in 2017, they could definitely use some young people who grew up living with this technology and understand the impact of these technologies in order to enact change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Graham. Now may I ask?
Katrina?
Please go ahead.
Because I'm sorry, but I was really taking a note from what I heard from this young group of leaders or young leaders, individuals or group, call it however. I mean, I was really very carefully making notes, what Liz said, and Elvin, of course, and Shoddy. Alexander, Sasha gave me a very interesting question. I mean, and of course, I see Graham, I mean, he also was talking about artificial intelligence and human rights. And so I just want to reflect a little bit because I really strongly suggest some of you to take a look, maybe, especially Graham, there is something which is called Artificial Intelligence Age Social Contract that was launched by Artificial Intelligence World Society, in which our co-chair, Madame Freiberger, and myself were among 8 co-authors, together with Vint Cerf, father of internet, and some very respected scientists from this field. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Most of the questions that you were putting down are something which we are working very much on it, because generally speaking, artificial intelligence is, as Stephen Hawking used to say when he was asked, what is the problem with artificial intelligence? He said, everything is okay as far as artificial intelligence has the same goal like we do, which implies 2 things: that artificial intelligence may have different goals than we do, but it's even more scary. Artificial intelligence can make a goal, which is first invention that we are actually creating, that may have its own goal, not because we pre-programmed it, but because of itself programmed it, whatever that itself is. And that goes back to Sasha's question. I mean, I strongly recommend Hariri, Sapiens and Homo Deus, especially Homo Deus. The book that is exactly talking about, Sasha, your concerns are. Basically speaking, what will happen with artificial intelligence tomorrow? Are we going, instead of working class, have useless class? And what that useless class is going to do? It is opening billions and billions of questions that are social questions about us. It's no more question about, is it going to, artificial intelligence going to conquer us? We are definitely going in direction, we are somehow merging with artificial intelligence. But the question is, I mean, will we be able to let's say, extend, develop, grow our human capacities? Human capacities which are, among other things, also being working. Because if you become useless class, I mean, of course, we cannot talk about nirvana societies in which everyone is painter, writer, actor, enjoying in culture, creating culture, and so on. So that's definitely completely a new chapter that has to be, but especially what we are going to, maybe, I don't know, I have a friend of mine who told me a few years, I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years, but I know what's going to happen in 10 or 20 years. We're going to live in a time which is called singularity time, in which basically it can be described as, some people saying, as a singularity time, as I think he said it's 10, 1, 10, 1 time, 10K, 1 million, 10 billion and 1 trillion. 10K is basically speaking, we're going to have in 10 or 20 years processing speed of the processor that is going to be close to our human brain's speed. So that's 10K. 10K is basically speaking, as they say, IQ is going to be 10K. What is 10K IQ? No one knows, because Einstein didn't hit 200. So I mean, what is 10K IQ? What if that intelligence comes to the conclusion how to treat us, if they come to conclusion based on how we treated animals, because we shoot animals for fun, because we say they are lower level species, hope that 10K IQ is not going to do the same thing. 1 million is processing power, and 10 billion is practically, we're going to live with 10 billion artificial intelligence robots around us, which is be more than us. And 1 trillion at today's speed is going to be 1 trillion Internet of the Things around us. So what's going to happen in that type of society? So that's the reason why I think that Graham, that Sasha, that questions that you raised are among the top questions that I'm concerned about. But those are the questions that I'm not going to give answers. I'm going to just pass the questions, and we should share questions more and more before we start answering that. But we have to come to the right questions. I think this field is opening us. And that's the reason why, and I'll stop it here. That's what leadership is about. Leadership is important in uncharted territories. Leadership is not so important in institutionally organized, strong systems, because institutions are stronger than individuals who are going to break it. Today, we live maybe in somehow we are witnessing countries in which system actually defend itself out of the reckless leaders. But what will happen in a time which we are actually building up completely new systems that we have no clue how they will look like. So that's why I think the leadership is first about right why and right question. Right why we are doing it, what do we want to achieve, and right question before we start answering. So Katja, thank you so much. I mean, I really did get a lot of good notes from what I was hearing from this young group. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
No,
Can I just quickly add something to Zlatko here?
please.
You talked about leadership, but I think increasingly in this complicated world we live in, we need to have compassionate leadership and you know, very much caring as well, because there are so many facets to leadership. And what we need more nowadays is more compassion. And this is something, again, Zlatko, where women leadership matter.
Thank you. Yeah, we talk about compassion now. Yesterday, there was a lot of talk about empathy as well, and I'm glad that it turns to those important characteristics. I am very happy. I was following the program, which was just going through who I'm supposed to call on, but I really like that it became interactive. And please do feel free to come in as and because this is supposed to be more of an interaction than just giving talks. But I will call next on Ameenah Zamulina to give a little presentation, her thoughts.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Katrina. And I was really happy to hear such words as AI, as privacy, GDPR, to be more specific, and human rights, because this is really what I am doing right now. And this is the main focus of my academic and professional interests. But before I start, I would like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to all of you. First of all, to our distinguished speakers. And I had a great chance to be in Baku 3 years ago in 2018. And I had to admit that it had such a great impact on me. And this was literally the time when I believed that I can be as big as my aspirations are. And I just want to say that all those, even the smallest pieces of advice which you give us, they're so meaningful to us. And they're like this very small seeds of inspiration and motivation which are growing inside of us. And they just give us so much confidence to act and to pursue our goals and so on. So thank you very much for that. And of course, I would like also to thank all the team of Nizami Ganjavi International Center and Ravshan for having me here and for making this all happen. So speaking of technologies, I would like to say that I'm working in the field of privacy. So the technologies and artificial intelligence is something which is really connected to this field. And as it was said earlier, we are really living in a changing reality, and we have to adapt this reality. But what is really alarming here is that a lot of people, they're still ignorant about the change which is happening. And the risk here is that they may even slip through this change and end up waking up in a world which is completely different. And it is true that we need to be aware of all the risks which technologies may pose. And speaking of the risks, I would like specifically tackle on the technologies of biometric facial recognition, because there is a huge concern today in the world regarding this technology. There are such risks as like data leakage. This is the most common risk, I would say. But another thing is that when this technology is in the hands of state authorities, that is where the biggest risk is. As yesterday Alim mentioned, the major risk is not in the technology itself, but in the people, because we are basically the source of our biggest troubles. And this is the way we use the technologies that we have. This is what's raising the concern. We had the cases when specifically technologies of biometric recognition, they were used in so-called social scoring systems. And it is not the very best example of how the good technologies may be used. Then there is also a huge risk of algorithms, which are basically not designed in a very good way. And we had examples in the United States with the wrong identification, which led to a very serious legal consequences when people of color were detained and arrested based on this false identification. But I do not really want to be pessimistic here, because we also have a lot of cases of positive examples. Like in India, such technologies help to find several thousands of lost children, and they brought these children back to their families and to their homes. And this is really exciting. So what I really want to say is that the technology, even if we have some risks coming with it, it is like a medicine. So if the medicine may cure a lot of people, we cannot just throw away this technology. We shall not abandon this technology out of the fear that it can be used in the wrong way. And this is really where a strong leadership is needed, because it is all really about the balancing all the risks and good things which it can give to us. But really, to be able to lead in this sphere, you need to be wise enough, you need to be confident enough, and you need to be strong enough to be able to take responsibility for a decisions which may affect so many people. But I hope that these young people which appear in this call and me myself will be able to do so in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have two more young people that we would like to give your thoughts, and then we will open it up to questions. I'd like to call on first Mr. Vahid Aliyev from Azerbaijan, and then Kehkashan Basu from Canada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, distinguished speakers, and dear colleagues. It's a very, very interesting, and I don't like this word, but I have to say hot topic today. We're discussing future of jobs and especially artificial intelligence. In my presentation, I think I somehow combined it, because when we talk about future of jobs in some of the spheres, we consider that in the future, and perhaps in the near future, some positions that are now held by humans can be replaced by machines, and in some spheres we are already witnessing it. So it's somehow a strong link between artificial intelligence and future of jobs. We are witnessing the fourth industrial revolution and the political, economic, and social transformations that this revolution is bringing. Critical evolving technologies like faster and more powerful networks, ubiquitous data, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and human enhancement will definitely impact geopolitical competition. I remember I was a child when I first saw the movie. I think it was by Steven Spielberg, and it was called Artificial Intelligence, AI. And at that time, to me, I thought, no, it would never be a reality. But now, after 20 years, it's so real, and it's near, and we are surrounded by it. I come from a legal background, and my interest lies in military AI technology. And within the legal circle, apart from cyber crimes and these famous drones, there are concerns, and huge concerns, about lethal autonomous weapon systems and meaningful human control. When we talk about lethal autonomous weapon systems to talk about systems that can independently select and target and engage their targets without humans. So this brings us to some ethical as well as legal concerns. We already witnessing the changing nature of warfare, but with these systems that I mentioned just now, there are even bigger problems. First of all, their connection to international humanitarian law. We know that humans are responsible for violations of international humanitarian law, but imagine if we have machines, who are we going to bring accountable for such violations? The manufacturer, for example, or if we still have human command, the person who presses the button, or I don't know, it's so difficult, and it's a looming issue. It's coming, it's on the horizon, and we're still talking about it, and we're still doing almost nothing about it. I always think about the pandemic, that some experts now say that it was foreseeable, but we were not prepared, and we always have something very crucial, and then we say, well, we knew this is coming, but we didn't have enough time, and we were not prepared. There are some, of course, there is some politics involved, and some countries such as US, Russia, Israel are opposing any complete ban on autonomous weapons or kind of new regulations and laws that would restrict the use of such weapons. Again, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but if we think about future of war, this is a real problem, and we definitely need to address some of the issues, at least to be sure that the human control is needed and it will be maintained, and we either update current regulations, adapt it to new technologies, or we develop some new rules and regulations in order to somehow prevent the negative consequences of the issue. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And now, please, Kehkashan Basu.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Excellencies and colleagues from Toronto, Canada. I'm Kehkashan. I'm a UN Human Rights Champion and founder president of Global Social Innovation Enterprise, Green Hope Foundation. And I would like to begin by saying that it was wonderful to hear President Gurib-Fakim speak about the importance of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's something that's really close to my heart, because 6 years ago, when I was 15, I was the youngest out of the 193 youth, each selected to represent a UN member state when the SDGs were adopted at the UN General Assembly. And it said then that the decisions that we take today will impact our future. And that's like really true right now. And since then, we've worked tirelessly to implement the SDGs on the ground. Now, as all of our panelists have stated, we know how drastically the pandemic has altered our social and economic landscapes globally, and especially hitting the education systems hard, where millions have been out of school and some of whom will never come back into its fold. And this has, of course, had a disproportionate impact on women and girls in vulnerable communities, and most especially amongst rural and indigenous communities, who are now at a risk of falling prey to abuse, trafficking, early marriage, and literally we are at a risk of losing an entire generation. And in this context, the future of jobs, as well as the related education infrastructure, does require immediate focus and must be a part of the recovery process. I would like to elaborate on the digital divide that Prime Minister Lagumdzija mentioned, because on one hand, we're witnessing tremendous technological progress and we're reaching new frontiers each day, riding on the back of digitalization, while ironically, millions are pushed back further because of this progress. And it is so unfortunate that we are in a situation where digital dividends coexist with digital divides. And this has just been exacerbated by the pandemic and amplified pre-existing inequalities of gender, color, race. And while developed nations were able to align their education delivery systems to, in just a matter of months, to the digital landscape, it really proved to be an insurmountable challenge for much of the global South. And it's been left to civil society actors such as us at Green Hope Foundation to work on these challenges and resurrect the education system, particularly in areas most hit by the pandemic. So for instance, the rural communities. So we at Green Hope Foundation launched our mobile libraries across our 25 country chapters to ensure that these children in the rural communities do not miss out on getting that quality education by bringing the library to their doorstep. And these mobile libraries are also solar powered, and our members conduct reading corners in these mobile libraries to help out the children with their education. As we all know, unemployment is also rife in such communities due to COVID, and we're overcoming these obstacles by implementing local circular bioeconomies, for instance, by providing skills-based training on sustainable farming and animal husbandry by distributing organic seeds and poultry so that women and girls are able to keep 40% for themselves and sell the rest for a stable source of income, as well as providing skills-based education by distributing sewing machines to women and girls in rural communities and starting our sewing school. So this is our way of ensuring that women and girls particularly are economically self-reliant and are able to contribute to the creation of a gender-smart circular economy, especially because we're also providing them with that training on sustainable finance so they're able to manage their funds well for all. So right now in this situation, it's really critical that governments are also able to follow similar activities, and the policies are tailored similarly, taking a cue from us as non-state actors and redefining the education system and really moving it away from this traditional Western-oriented method and instead implementing skills-based learning programs, because as we've all heard today, the future of jobs needs to be in sync with the local circular economy model. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So may I please ask you to raise your hands if you have questions or if there's other comments you would like to make now. We are exactly where we're supposed to be at 6:30. We finished everything and now we can just speak to each other and ask questions and answer questions. And I see my first hand and it's Fazer.
Thank you. So, my name is Fazer Shahid. I primarily work in the human rights section. While the pandemic had directed the use of technology in a more resourceful manner, there were other areas of concern that we have also noted. In discussing the solutions to this pandemic, the vaccination drive has proven to be the biggest topic recently. However, this is not the end solution. The end solution is going to be technology-based, and it's going to be more precise, and it could solve a lot of problems. So therefore, I just wanted to direct the issue towards the merging of the humankind and technology in the future, which was also discussed earlier. Now, while the world has taken a different trajectory in terms of technology, where everything has been directed towards the space-based technology, there is also different type of technology that is evolving here, which is bionics and maybe artificial intelligence. And there is some sort of a unification of this. There's an intermingling of technology and the human nature. So in future, what I see is that there is going to be a type of a cyborg that evolves. I mean, like with the evolution of technology, there's going to be much more connection between technology and the humankind. And therefore, I see certain problems with this because like different people are going to have different types of technology attached to them. And eventually, the issue is going to be that there's going to be a class disparity between the people, which means the richer, more hoarding people are probably going to have better capabilities with the use of technology, and therefore there is going to be a power struggle between the people who can't afford and the people who can afford, because the people who can afford the technology are the people who are going to rule this world. Your opinion, please, Dr. Zlatko. Thank you.
Okay. Why don't I go, we'll do 2 or 3 questions, and then if our main speakers would like to respond, that's fine. I'd like to ask Karim to say something.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Do you hear me, right?
We hear you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Karim. I'm the director of Azerbaijani Cultural House in Barcelona, and at the same time, I'm a football agent. And since it's my first speech, I would like to thank to the Nizami Ganjari International Center for bringing us together, and also give us an opportunity to hear from the world leaders on the most important topics, most important issues. And thank you for this experience. And my question is gonna be very short. First question, for me is really interesting. Is the future of education are free education for all, and it will be accessible for everyone? And if you don't mind, I would like to ask my second question. And how can we take what we have learned during the pandemic to impart positive change on our schools and universities, and also ultimately shape healthier and wiser and also like equitable communities? That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I see Kaiser has a question.
Yes, thank you, madam, and good morning, good evening, everyone. My question is regarding the future of technologies, particularly in the global south, where I'm currently based. What needs to be done to galvanize educators, policymakers, young people, students, and socio-economic groups into action so that the current emerging technologies in the current education system as a whole can remain relevant and fit for purpose in our today's digital age? With the supplement, I do have another question, which is regarding how much is crucial for scientists to be a part in the policy making process besides the politician and others. Thank you.
Madam Ameenah, it looks like your colleague, the Prime Minister, has left for another meeting, so all the questions will have to go to you.
Wow,
Ms.
okay.
Katrina, but Prime Minister Zlatko already just joined us back again. I just sent you a message.
Oh, he's back, right? I just read your message that he left, so good,
Yeah.
I'm glad. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
That's
just,
artificial intelligence, like, you know, the role of
There you are, good.
That was the connection, and I went for just a quick, but then I couldn't, and I reconnected it.
Good,
yeah.
good. I
Yes,
think that I've called on everyone. Yeah, I've called on everyone who had their hands up, so I'd appreciate your continuing the conversation now.
Yeah. I'll just quickly respond to some of the questions that have been raised. I'll just answer kind of globally because I think the words which have been coming up throughout the conversation has been leadership, has been the digital divide, has been education, has been the quality of education, has been the access to education, and I think I think it's all coming together in as much as for us to face up to our future, we will have to start investing in education. And there's another word also I missed out is the necessity for regulation. This is where there's a call again for government to play a much more active role in everything that's going on. We need the regulators back, we need governments back. Now to come back again to education. Education it has been said time and time again that it is the biggest social enabler. There is no getting out of this. It's a tool with which we can change the world, as Nelson Mandela has rightly said. Now, what is now the access to that education? That's one thing, because in many parts of the world, access is already an issue. Then the next thing, when there is access, what is the quality of the education which is being dispensed? Is the education still fit for purpose? I mean, this is something that we have to address all the time. And this is, again, where the regulator has a key role to play, because the government in place, through the leadership that they will bring on board, will have to ensure that the education which is given, which is imparted in school, is fit for purpose. And also it is dovetailing with the development of that particular region, that country. Because if the government is not ensuring that the education is fit for purpose, I mean, right up front, we are losing 1 or 2 generations. So we have to ensure that it is fit for purpose, it meets the requirement of the economy and whatever. So we need to have this engagement between the public, the private sector, and the civil society. And of course, government has to play a very key role in there. And also, one important message that we have to bring on board increasingly is that education is an investment. And many countries, we are saying the privatization of education, and it is leaving so many people behind, because it boils down then to the chasm between the have and the have-nots. And this is also what is being seen in terms of access to technology. We are seeing the divide. The digital divide is there. We look at my continent, Africa, we see that so many people have been removed from the various economic space because they don't have access to technology. So again, it boils down to investment. It boils down to the presence of government. It boils down to the regulators who will act as a level playing field. So this is what we are calling for. We are calling for much more empathy. We are talking about compassion. We are talking about an enlightened leadership that will ensure that these young people look to the future through the prism of hope. And as we speak, this is a growing desperation, because they're looking at the future in many parts of the world where there is no leadership, when government have kind of abdicated from their role, and we are seeing the way the corporate sector is actually getting and kind of literally cannibalizing so many of the sectors. So we need government. We need regulation. We need youth. We need empowerment of the young people. We need to work together so that we can deliver on these, what I call elusive SDGs, because we're already 2021, 2022, almost there. In 8 years, to be able to deliver on the 17 SDGs, to me, look like a dream, unfortunately. Sorry, I have to say this, Ms. Basu, but this is what the way I'm looking at it, very, very realistically. Thank you.
May I ask Mr. Yunus to speak?
Thank you so much, Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and pleasure to be here this afternoon again. Thank you for the opportunity. NJIC, I feel so honored, especially representing Nigeria, despite the fact that I'll be speaking for West Africa whenever I'm deemed to make my presentation. Thank you so much, President Ameenah Gurib. I just wanted to ask, you made mention of promoting lateral thinking in our young people, in our youth looking forward. So my question here is how? The question of how. As advocates, I'm sure you may advise us to go with advocacy and enlightenment most of the time. But from the part of the world I'm coming from, it seems like we've been doing a lot. Many people who are in the educational sector are doing advocacy programs, are doing engagements, raising awareness and all. And right now, what I really understand is that the system, many people look forward to the government alone, especially post-pandemic. The government has supported many young people in terms of skills, but post-pandemic now, like the government have not been, shifting their attention towards this many young people. So eventually they are losing hope. So I think I just wanted to know, how do we promote this lateral thinking in young people? So, and then you made mention of the time maybe in the future where we're having engagements, to talk about the engagement on education, on the future of education. Are this education given in schools relevant? Are they fit for purpose? So I will please indulge you to please, whenever this kind of conversation is about to go on, please try as much as you can as an executive, as a powerful person from the continent, and equally among the world leaders, try to engage people from Global South, especially Nigeria, because I think it will go a long way in restructuring the phase of our education. The education system being given in Nigeria currently is, to me, I think, according to a research conducted about 2 years ago, it's like 50 years behind schedules of other educations of the world. So it will be an honor for us to have this engagement with you. Thank you so much, and I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you. Kehkashan, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you. My question is for Prime Minister Lagumdzija. I'm really glad you spoke about nuclear non-proliferation. I'm a huge proponent of nuclear disarmament, and we and my organization work on disarmament education for young people. And one of the areas that we cover is nuclear energy. And you mentioned how nuclear energy is a positive of the nuclear knowledge that we have, because can be seen as renewable and clean energy. But the nuclear energy plants and the uranium mine that still comes from the destruction of indigenous lands, and we still haven't found a sustainable way of disposing our nuclear waste. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about how we might go about addressing such a situation, and if there are any alternatives that you might see fit. Thank you.
I'm wondering, is Prime Minister Lagumdzija with us right now? I think he stepped. Oh, there you are. Very good. Did you hear the question?
Yeah, I was really closely. I'm sorry. I just turned when I was looking at the questions that Liz was to me, Kassir sent to me, and probably while I was watching to those questions that passed to me in written form, and I here have some new messages, whatever. And I here have Kehkashan, you passed me some message in here in written form and now verbally. So that's the reason why I made. After all, you have to understand I'm old-fashioned computer scientist, so don't be surprised that sometimes computers don't listen to me because I made he made so many bad things to them. So sometimes they probably, trying to work against me. So that's the reason why you didn't see me. Anyway, now you do. Now, first. Liz, of course, you were really passing the question to similar to also Kassir was having a very interesting question about a country like the country that he's coming from, Pakistan, and country that is friendly to country which is Bosnia, which is the country where I'm coming from. I think that when it comes to I heard something, I don't know what's, wait a second. Okay, good. I'm sorry, my computer heard me that I was complaining about computers, so computers started functioning against me again. It looks like artificial intelligence is advancing faster than I thought. Now, I think that there is one interesting survey done by World Economic Forum that was published some half year ago, beginning of this year. That was talking about a survey done, global survey about digital transformation. It's a very interesting thing that 13% of the managers globally answered that we are and their organizations are ready for digital age, which means, basically speaking, the digital age is not only how many iPhones you have and what is your internet speed and how many computers is behind you. Digital age is much more than just technology, which is good news and bad news. It's a good news for, forgive me for maybe it's not proper thing to do, but it's good for less developed countries, because with digital technology and with this type of digitalization, there is an entry barrier to get in to digitalized society, digital organization is much, much smaller than it was, let's say, when Industrial Revolution was happening. You require a lot of capital, a lot of technology, a lot of know-how to jump in, to be highly industrialized country. But in order to be information-based society, there is no such a big investment like it used to be. And especially the most important skill and the most important resource for getting into digital age is actually what we all carry in here. I can assure you that from my students from China to United States to Slovenia to all over the European Union, and my students just across the street where I live, are about, there is no big difference in between them in sense of their skills. I was having a few very interesting courses, a master program with Beijing Normal University and Schwarzman University at Beijing, that are putting together people from all over the world. An excellent group of emerging leaders from emerging countries, developing countries, in Beijing Normal University. And they're extraordinary people, regardless of the GDP of the country. I mean, when they hit and when they confront with skilling themselves with the digital skills, there are no difference. Are you in California or you are or you are from Kathmandu or from California? It's irrelevant. I mean, you simply have the same prerequisite. That's the good part of it, and that's why I think it is important to point out that this, just as some of you said, these SDGs, they have very strong transformative power in education, inclusion, job, and growth, because SDGs itself have very strong transformation power for especially education and inclusion, for health and well-being at the same time, for clean energy in industry. And I'll come back to Kesha, to your question about atomic energy, sustainable food and land use and oceans, smart cities and transport, and finally digital technologies and e-governance. So when it comes to the atomic energy, which I made Kaisha reference to atomic energy and artificial intelligence, atomic energy was actually the invention that can be, depending on how you use it, it can be good or bad. Of course, you are right that atomic energy producing energy by atomic power plant has a lot of negative effects. But having in mind the transition that we go through from, basically speak, to get rid of CO2, because that's where our clock is ticking out. CO2, we have to get rid of CO2 as quick as possible. For this transition period, we'll definitely, obviously need some kind of atomic energy to be, let's say, in this transition period used, and we have to be careful about it. But at the same time, that can give us time until renewables, wind, solar, for else solar and wind energy will be capable enough to fulfill our needs for energy that we do have. So this is that transition period. I'm more afraid, don't get me wrong, but I'm more afraid of atomic energy that is encapsulated in atomic bombs than in power plants. With all respect, it can be also a problem. We know from Chernobyl how it can end up. We know from Japanese disaster how it can end up. But the biggest problem today with nuclear energy is actually arms race. And the biggest problem, and that's the reason why atomic energy, International Atomic Energy Agency is so important. That's the reason why I think that in advance, we have to, from the day one, don't forget that Atomic Energy Agency was established after bomb exploded, after Korean War was over, and after actually the war was, after Russians started testing hydrogen bomb. Then the world realized that they are going to be all bombed and we are going to be destroyed. And that's the reason why that Atomic Energy Agency was established. We have to do that with Artificial Intelligence Agency before we get some kind of new threat, like it was Nagasaki and Hiroshima, because this time we may come to be the ones who are actually, as someone says, we should not allow that atomic information, artificial intelligence becomes our last invention. That after that, we are not going to invent anything because artificial intelligence will be inventing anything. And in the end, artificial intelligence may invent the world in which we are just disposable materials. So that's the reason why I was making reference to atomic energy. I completely agree with you that we have to take care about it. And last point about education, I want to say one small short note about education. I think that we have to invest and we have to shift education much more in area, if I can put it this way, education historically was education for knowledge and education for skills. And education was, basically speaking, in educational institutions, purpose of education to educate you to make living. Because religious institutions, families, and others were involved more caring about how will you live. They were more dealing with education about the character. I think that overall educational system has to move in direction not only to be education for skills and knowledge, but education for character. Not only education for how to make living, but also education how to live. Because coming from my part of the world, religious institutions are definitely not sufficient to be caring about education for character. With all due respect, that they can be helpful, but they are not enough. We have to transform our educational system in that sense, to make us being more, to be not better workers, but be better people. Because that's what education has to be about, especially in a time in which we are becoming so technologically powerful, so economically powerful, that we can destroy each other much faster, much more efficient than ever before in our history. In our history, only armies were able to exterminate and destroy countries. Today, you don't need armies to destroy countries and even to destroy the planet. So that's the reason why I think, as Ameenah was very eloquently pointing out, those principles of education, that is not only about, how to do homework in technology or business, or how to be ready for work, but how to live, as I said, not how to make a living. So, Katrina, back to you, and I will not touch my computer, so it will probably.
Thank you. We only have a few more minutes left, and I would just like to ask Madame Ameenah if you'd like to say something in conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you to Nizami for organizing this. I mean, it is really a fantastic opportunity to discuss with young people, because you are our future. Just one thing, I just wanted quickly to respond. I think there was a question on access to education in Mauritius and for Africa. And we made education free in this country since 1976. And the way we managed to do this is through the principles of governance, holding the politicians to account, and students did the uprising. They went on the street, they complained, and they insisted that education must become free for all. There should be no stereotype. I'm not saying that you should start a revolution in your country, but this is how we got it in our country. So hold your politicians to account, and make them speak the truth to the power that there be, and insist on your rights, because right now what we're seeing over the past few years is the erosion of civil liberties, and this is not something that we want. And I think through education we can have civilized discussion, and we should really hold them to account, those who govern us. And we have the ways to vote. Democracy is alive in many parts of the world. So vote with your wallet, vote with your social media account, vote with your feet, vote with everything, but hold people to account, because at the end of the day, you pay the politicians their salaries, because you taxes that you pay. So make sure that you have this discussion, because they owe you a future to a large extent, by elaborating on the right policies that will engage everybody together, so that we have a safer and, of course, a more equitable world, because equity and equality are issues which will challenge us for a long, long time. We've talked about digital inequality, but there's so many other aspects of inequality, so many facets that we have to tackle if we want to have a civilized society. Thank you, Katrina. That was my 2 cents.
Katrina?
Thank you. Thank you. I do want to say to Mr. Prime Minister, there was also a question from Pfizer that here in the chats, if you could take a look at that.
Katrina, all great minds think alike. Believe it or not, here on the right side of my screen, I have a Pfizer question in here, which I just raised my hand because I wanted to answer to that. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Pfizer, I really do share your opinion in part of the statement, which is part of your overall question. I think it is very important, especially when technology, because there, as they say, there are 3 options how the things will work. Either we are going to keep being masters of technology, and we will be masters of technology. Second potential option is that with artificial intelligence, the growth of technology is going to be mastering us. And the third option is that we will somehow cohabitate or even merge. So if some people are saying that the most probable one or most optimistic one is that we merge, because that we master artificial intelligence completely, and it has no, you cannot master artificial intelligence that you're trying to make smarter than yourself and then think that you will be able to master it like it's completely done. So probably that option is not so realistic. But the merging of humans and technology is something, and cohabitation is something which is, and you are rightly pointing out that do we have to stick to our principles of equality in between us as humans? I think that this let's say bionic capacities that are going to be in front of us, they will be completely new level of inequality, which we haven't seen so far. Because inequality that is today visible was mostly economic inequality, but that's not the only inequality. It's injustice inequality, it's educational inequality. But technological inequality is going to be bigger and bigger, especially if the things go in this direction. That's the reason why I go back to what Keisha was saying about we have to be more empathetic. And that's the reason why I'm insisting so much on education for character, education for not any type of character, but education for the character that is more caring, more empathetic, education for shared society in which we are having shared future, understand that we have to have shared responsibility, and ultimately we have to be, let's say, happy to have all differences that are among us, and having those differences as our asset, not our liability, and flourishing those diversities and those differences among us. That's the reason why I think that it is very important, as Faiza said, that we have to, I strongly agree that we have to even think about inequality or go for equality, having in mind technology, because that's going to be new way of a new level of inequalities, which will be much bigger than the previous one, and especially it will be related also to health inequality. Our overall human capacities as being healthy, strong, and long living, because that's going to be a result of this growth of technology. And last point is I think that we are entering into age in which when it comes to the leadership, it is very important that the new generation of leaders has stick to some principles. First principle is, of course, something which you learn in every book. You have to have a vision about how you want to go for, how your future want to look like. That's not going to change. But second principle, which is very, very important, especially when we are talking about so many powers that we are going to have as individuals and as a groups in economic and technological sense, we have to be led by values. It is important that our leadership is determined by the values that we really think, talk, and walk. Not only that we preach without really living it. So the second thing is, as I said, values is very important. The third element, which is very important, is partnership. I mean, there is nothing that you can do alone. No one is as smart as everyone, and no one can do as everyone can do together. And the fourth element, what I see here as very important one, is persistence. I can assure you from my own experience, I learned much more from my losses than my wins. And I became probably smarter and better, even as a person, as a technocrat, after I lost and I survived, than after I've won. So persistence is very important. You have to stick to what you believe in. You have to stick to that vision. You have to stick to those values, and you have to stick to the people that you are living with, that partnership. And that's why persistence. And last one is practically speaking, Kaisha, what you are talking about, empathy. Last one is you have to be passionate. You have to be passionate about what you believe in and what you go for, and you have to have passion for other people. You have to have passion for other people, not only for yourself, but you have to be passionate about your goals, about your vision and your values, and about your friends. So I'll stop in here. It's more than 2 minutes, Katya. I'm sure you're going to forgive me for sorry for being out of the loop for a time.
No, I found this a very interesting conversation. Thank you so much. I also see that we're all getting to know each other better, getting to communicate more. I see in our chats that everyone's starting to connect on LinkedIn. And that's, I think, one of our main goals here is to share with you, but also to have you continue this interaction on your own as well. So I look very much forward to seeing all of you again tomorrow. We're going to have Maria Fernanda Espinoso of Ecuador speaking on the role of young leaders and change makers in much needed reform. And I really, really look forward to hearing you respond as to what you think is the role of young leaders. So thank you very much for today. And we look forward to seeing you at the same time tomorrow.
Ms. Katerina, there is only one change, that President Plavdiviev also will join tomorrow with Ms. Fernandez.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who did you say?
President Plavdiviev. Instead of another day, he will join tomorrow.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That'll make very interesting conversation. Great. Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.